recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Arn. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer himself, the founder of the Four Horsemen, the creator, the inventor, if you will, of the spine buster. He is the enforcer. He is Double A, Arn Anderson. Arn, how are you, man?
You left out lover of Christmas time.
Ooh, here we are. Christmas Day. Come on with it. How excited are you, man? Christmas is here.
I'm a kid. I've always loved Christmas. I always still try to get surprises and put under the tree that nobody knows. And our family really goes out. You know, it's just a nice little, the four of us hanging out Christmas Eve and Christmas night. But it's just one of those deals. It's just, we go down to McDaniel and see the lights and all that stuff and drive through the neighborhood. It's outstanding, ain't it?
It is. It's the best, man. It really is the best time of year. Of course, Cassio and I, friend of the show, we really love Thanksgiving, but man, Christmas is hard to beat. So let's talk about Christmas for a minute. We've heard a lot about Mrs. Anderson, and of course, everybody listening to this at least knows about Brock. We don't really know about your other child. What's going on with him, and what's he up to these days?
Well, hell, he's not a child. He's a grown-ass man.
Yes, he is.
You know, and he came along in that time frame with Cody and Ashley and all those kids, and he's doing good. He floats around from different jobs. He's in the food industry and bartending industry, and you know, when things are good, that can be a pretty decent job for folks. When it's not, you know, when it's not, it's not. No marriage, no kids, you know, it's he's still trying to find his way on through this tangled web we call life, and but he's doing good, and I'm proud of him, and we're good.
We're glad to hear it, and we're great here today. We're talking about November 1986. Of course, that is the month where Starrcade 86 happened. And by the way, if you want to hear Dax Harwood, not Hardwood, despite what your figure may say, but Dax Harwood from FTR, aka AEW, easy for me to say. You and he are going to be watching your cage match from Starrcade 86 over at adfreeshows.com as soon as we hang up, right?
Absolutely. And there's a lesson to be learned watching that match. I'm going to enjoy watching it myself.
Stone Cold Steve Austin said years ago on his podcast, it was maybe his favorite tag match ever. And you guys can watch it along with Arn Anderson and Dax from FTR over at adfreeshows.com. But without further ado, let's get to it. Let's talk about November 86. November 1st is in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. You've got Ricky and Robert taking on Ole and Arn. Philadelphia, man, it's like the home of hardcore wrestling. And here you guys are with some of the biggest stars of 1986, the Rock and Roll Express. Philadelphia. Any great Philadelphia memories you can share with us?
Well, as it were, last week we did a signing, Brock and I, Icons of Wrestling in Philadelphia. Were you aware of that?
I was. Icons of Wrestling, of course, is in the old ECW arena. What a cool spot that is, man. That must have been fun to see the old ECW arena, which I think you wrestled one time in. Is that right?
Yeah, I did a couple of shows, TV shows. What was cool was, you know, I got to see some guys that I haven't seen in a while. I saw Gail Kim, who was, you know, very, very nice, and as she always is. I saw Barbarian. I saw Warlord. I saw Haku. You know, there was a lot of guys that came by. Bubba Dudley stopped by. Devon Dudley stopped by. Kevin Thorne, who was one of my proteges years ago. who has had a lot of aptitude for this business. I wish things would have turned out better, but he's making a fortune kind of in your kind of work.
Real estate, right?
Real estate. Yeah, he's doing well. He ain't complaining. And I just got to see it. And I'm sure I'm leaving a couple of folks out, but I got to see a lot of people I hadn't seen. Jerry Lawler was right beside us. Sarge was right down the way. It's always a pleasure to see those guys. Luger was there. It was cool. It was a really good time. It was a good 4.5 hours, again, with the opportunity of thanking the fans, which I've never had an opportunity to do because I was always working. And it just feels good, man. And, they're digging the podcast. That's the first thing they say. Love the podcast. So hats off to you, my man.
Well, whatever that means, they're tuning in for you, and we're glad they do. Let's go to November 1st. We've got an episode of Worldwide here, and we've got a promo from the Andersons, both Ole and Arn. Let's take a listen. November 1st, 1986.
It is something. Now look, to the Four Horsemen, Arn Anderson, Ole Anderson, The Rock, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew. You know, they talk about Starrcade and all the things that are happening. I've never seen a scaffold match myself, and I'm looking. Wait a minute, Mr. Somebody been looking for us. We're real hard to find. Where you been hiding, Crockett? Every day we have
a contract for Starrcade, world title match in a cage. Will you sign it?
Let me tell you, anytime we get in the ring with the Rock and Roll Express, you know it's going to happen. Everybody knows it's going to happen. And if you make the mistake of putting us in there in a cage, well, then what do you think is going to happen to the Rock and Roll Express, Crockett? Your little favorite boys are going to get pounded right in the ground. Look at you stand there. You haven't got nothing to say. It's probably the first time in your life you've been speechless. Well, I'm not speechless. And I'll tell you what, you know doggone well there ain't nobody in the world that's going to beat me and Arn. And nobody in the world is going to beat us when we're in a cage. When we get done with them,
are you going to sign the contract?
You ask a dumb question like that. Tell him, Arn.
All I can tell you, Mr. Crockett and Mr. Crockett, this is more collusion. It's simply collusion out of what you consider the power structure is. The bottom line is the Four Horsemen dictate policy all over this world. What we say goes, not what you say, or not what you say. Because when we get in a square circle, it's with the Rock and Roll Express. It's not with you, and it's not with you.
Where are you going to sign?
Yeah, I'm talking about something more important. The bottom line is, Rock and Roll, Father Time has caught up with you. You take a look at me, you take a look at The Rock. You're looking at 550, 60 pounds. Whether or not it's a cage, that's beside the point. The bottom line is, you're not dumping up. And all this little collusion out of the Crockett has done is just lit a fire under our butt. The Four Horsemen shall prevail, period. Starrcade means Ric Flair. David Crockett, quit interrupting me.
What do you think, Crockett? What do you think? Another Crockett. Everywhere you look around here, Crockett's all over the place. I'll tell you what, when we get in that cage match, everybody's saying goodbye. You better write letters to the Rock and Roll Express because it'll be the last time they'll ever be able to read them. When we get done, there won't be any Rock and Roll Express. You put them in a cage against us, you're making the biggest mistake of your life. And that guy is making the biggest mistake of his life, too. Why don't you shut up and let me say something? Rock and Roll Express, it's fun. All right, we'll see you next week, ladies and gentlemen. I wish they would sign instead of talking.
So how about that, man? The ambush of Jim Crockett Jr. saying not only do you have a match at Starrcade, a cage match. You guys weren't too happy about that. That was a fun promo.
It never occurred to me, but I just got away with screaming at a couple of millionaires.
Yes, you did.
That was outstanding. I never get to do that. You can't holler at millionaires or billionaires. But I guess I got away with one. But they still got what they wanted because we signed the contract. That was not an issue.
Super fun to go back and watch a moment like that. By the way, that aired on Worldwide, which was the syndicated show. Here's a promo from the Horseman on Pro, the other syndicated show. Let's take a listen.
All right, right, fans, here they are, the Four Horsemen. James J. Dillon, all of them together, JJ. It's a great occasion anytime the Four Horsemen are together. But what you're looking at, your pictures, you are looking at what is Starrcade 86. And let's get the world champion up front because he's what Starrcade's all about. And he's going to get this issue settled when Nikita Koloff in real short order. And we're going to put him in his place. In the match that we're all excited about, the first blood match for the world television title with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes. And very simply, what it's all about is the man that draws first blood on his opponent in this big match will leave the ring as the world television champion. And you know where I put my money. It's always with the Four Horsemen. And the Rock and Roll Express, they come out here, some kind of a grandstand play, try to impress everybody, talking about flashing a contract for some kind of a cage match, trying to scare us. Hey, the Andersons aren't very hard to find, that's for sure. Woo. All right, fans, here we are, back to the ring.
So it turns out it was just a JJ promo, even though all the horsemen are there. That's pretty rare, is it not?
Yeah, but you know what? He held his end up.
Oh, for sure.
Anytime JJ has a whole promo dedicated to us, he nailed it. He was as much, and I've said this countless times, as much a horseman as any of us, because he carried himself in such a manner. He was so classy. He was so intelligent. He was so worldly about the business. And when he carried a promo, he carried it. I didn't feel like anything was lost not hearing from the rest of us this occasional time. And it was only occasionally that happened.
One of the things I wanted to ask you about is as we watch that promo, we see a lot of you guys in your boots, in your tights, maybe in a t-shirt, but certainly in your sunglasses. Sunglasses, trunks, and boots. That's wrestling, is it not?
It's arrogant as it can possibly be. Carreras for me.
Indoors.
Yeah. And what really got obnoxious is when we wore them at night.
Oh, it's the worst.
We did shit, Conrad, and it was just off the cuff because we could.
Yeah, sure.
You know, every one of us were different. You know, Cully was like Flair. They were the fashion icons. Ole wore the same shirt for at least 50 weeks. And then when he chose to go and wear street clothes, it was that same Munsing wear pullover, 27 weeks. But who's going to say anything or do anything about it? Everybody was unique. Everybody was different. And, the sunglasses, which mine were prescription, which nobody probably thought about. I was blind as a bat. I wrestled off of body heat quite a few matches.
Whoa, hang on. Those Carrera sunglasses were prescription sunglasses?
You betcha.
Wow.
So not only was I rocking those glasses, I could see pretty good with them on. Matter of fact, my granny asked me one time at the very beginning, because she never got to see me wrestle live. She said, "Son, do you wrestle with your glasses on?" I said, "No, Granny, but probably should. I'd probably do a lot better." And it was an honest question from her.
That's tremendous. Well, November 2nd, of course, is when we see the WTBS episode. You guys were recorded on the 2nd and it aired on the 8th. And we're going to listen to that here in a moment. But on the 3rd, you're in Fayetteville, North Carolina, second from the top. Ron Garvin and you would fight to a no contest. Ron Garvin at the time was the Mid-Atlantic heavyweight champion. And of course, back in the territory days, that was the quote unquote top guy belt. Of course, these days, Ric Flair's running around with the NWA world title. So maybe not so much, but still second from the top against Ron Garvin. What do you remember about singles matches with him, especially here in Fayetteville, North Kakalaki?
Well, you had a bunch of soldiers, a bunch of tough guys, a bunch of guys that came down on their time off and wanted to drink a half a dozen beers and see a fight. And God bless them. Those guys, if they, the men and women of the military, if they didn't do to an excellent level what they do. None of us would get to do what we do back here at home. So they had our respect. They didn't particularly like us because we were pretty indignant at that time. And when Ronnie Garvin put you through the ringer, it made for a satisfied crowd, because defending his title, he would beat the crap out of you. If he was going after your title, he would beat the crap out of you. Fact is, Ronnie Garvin he was one of those bad apples, and they knew what to expect. And he was going to probably out wrestle you, out punch you, out brawl you. You just happened to hope on that given night you could exploit some mistake that he might make. And that's about the only chance you had, because he was very skilled.
November 4th, you're going to be in Spartanburg, South Kakalaki this time, and it's a TV taping. You'll be teaming with Tully Blanchard to take on John Savage and Ron Rossi. Any memories of those two guys you can share with us?
Yeah, you know who John Savage is?
I do not.
He is brother to the Barbarian.
Oh, I had no idea.
He is John. His name is John also, as Barbarian's name is John. And good physique, smaller version. But if you go back and look at him now with that knowledge, you could see the resemblance. And, he had some Island Boy cock strong strength, we would probably call it back in the day. Mr. Rossi probably was outmanned and outgunned, but I'm sure John did okay for himself.
I also want to mention that on the same TV taping, we had Jumbo Saruta and Tenryu tagging up to take on Brody Chase and Tony Zane, two what would go on to be major Japanese stars. I mean, Saruta and Tenryu were two big-time Japanese performers. Did you get to spend any time with those fellows back in the day here in 1986?
Not really. They kind of did their own thing. It was that the amount of English that the Japanese boy knew, you never knew how much they knew. It was, if they wanted to be social, they could speak to you any way that you wanted to speak to them. If they wanted to kayfabe and kind of be under the wire, I always figured they wanted to be like the bug on the wall, where they could hear all the conversations like they weren't even there and get a lot of inside intel. That was pretty much the consensus. And by the way, did you hear Smokey go off on the delivery man just a minute ago?
I did. I wasn't going to sell it, but I'm glad you did.
I feel so protected. He's up to 7.5 pounds.
Oh, well, you'll have no issue. Does he know the spine buster yet?
No, he would be. Oh my God.
More of a gourd buster guy, if I had to guess.
I'm thinking he does what we call the Fred Flintstone. He will look at you and scratch off backwards. That would be his defense. And probably, since his teeth are so tiny and his head so little, his jaws ain't very strong, that'd probably be his offense too. The Fred Flintstone.
How old is he?
He's 4.
Okay. So he's working on it. He's getting there.
They're just little bitty fellas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Pomeranians are tiny.
Have you guys always been Pomeranian people?
No. Our first dog was Sammy, and he was one of the most beautiful golden Cocker Spaniels you will ever see. Looked like a show dog. He was a show dog, and sweet as he could be. That was our first dog, and we had him for 12 years. And
wow.
And we had Petey, who was our last Pomeranian, which we got from Ashley. Charlotte. For those that don't know who Ashley is. And we took over raising him, and he was awesome. He had a little attitude, as you can imagine.
Yeah, runs in the family.
Privileged.
Yeah.
He came from a privileged family from the mansion. And then Smokey we got after Petey passed. So we always have one hanging around. I'm trying to get another one in there so he's got a buddy, but nobody's having it.
Well, maybe we should have sent one for Christmas. You think the missus would have liked the new puppy for Christmas, or maybe not so much?
If you want to take the ass whooping.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm going to pass on that. November 6th, we're in Raleigh, North Kakalaki, the Dorton Arena, and we will see Arn defeat Wahoo McDaniel. Man, going back in time, Wahoo McDaniel, man and a half. I recently talked to Diamond Dallas Page, and he said that Wahoo McDaniel had the biggest hands of any human he ever saw. I can't imagine that you were excited to be on the other end of that on November 6th.
And thick.
Yeah.
They were big and they were thick. And his biggest advantage or disadvantage both was whatever night he showed up, however bad his shoulder was, determined where that chop landed. If it was really good, it probably hit you right where it should, right in the chest. If it was off a tick or two and he had to really aim it instead of just throw it, you might catch it in the nose or the chin or the throat. No matter where it landed, it was extremely painful.
November 7th, we were in Hampton, Virginia at the Coliseum. Even though we had advertised Road Warriors versus the Andersons, it winds up being a singles bout with you and Animal. How was Animal as a singles opponent?
Those guys were better as a team. They just gelled better. It's like saying, I mean, could the Rock and Roll be split up and have a good match? Yeah, of course they could. But it wasn't the same effect as the flow they had as a team. Same thing with the Road Warriors. I don't recall why Mike, it must have been something personal, something serious, maybe a death in the family. I don't know. I don't even remember him ever not being there to make a shot. So I wish I could recall why he wasn't there, but had to be something serious.
The next day, Tony Schiavone is the announcer for the in-ring introductions in Charlotte at the Coliseum. It's November 8th. And again, you're working with Animal and singles competition. And then it's the weekend. It's time to take a dip and listen to what happened on November 8th. Of course, there's a variety of shows that happen on the weekend. Let's listen to a singles promo from Arn Anderson here on November 8th, 1986 on Worldwide. Here we go.
And now let's talk about Starrcade 86, the Skywalkers. Greensboro Coliseum, one of the host cities. Thanksgiving night, 8 o'clock, 12 gigantic matches, including in a cage for the World Tag Team title, the Rock and Roll Express against Ole and Arn Anderson. Here's Arn Anderson.
This is directed to you, Ricky and Robert. You see, you've had that luxury in the past of being the champion. All you had to do was get yourself DQ'd, go through the time limit, or somehow slip out with the titles. But you see, you asked for the cage. That's your undoing because you checked the Four Horsemen's record in any cage match anywhere in the country, and it'll tell you. We always come out after breaking a few bones and a few scars. So this, on the silver anniversary of the World Tag Team titles, it's only fitting that we bring them home to the Minnesota Wrecking Crew and the Four Horsemen.
First blood.
So that happened in the backstage area of the old Crockett office. They had the cage propped up. You walk behind it and cut your promo from behind it. I know it's silly and simple, but Lord, it was classic. What a cool promo that was.
Well, thank you. And you know what? When they do put that cage up and you're looking from the inside out, everything does look different. Just like when you're on the outside looking in, you can see what's going on in a cage match, but it's unobstructed. And before too long in those days, that bright silver cage started to get a little bloody and a little gory. And that was the story.
That is the story. And of course, you can't do it by yourself. You've got to have the rock and rolls in there. This is a promo from November 8th. This is the Rock and Rolls here on Worldwide. Let's take a listen.
The Skywalkers. Let's bring in right now Rock and Roll Express in the cage for the World Tag Team title.
That's right, Tony. It's in a cage. We asked for to keep the other horsemen out of the ring. The belt's on the line right there in the Starrcade, guys. Let me tell you something, Anderson. You better bet 110%, baby, because brother and I, We wanted to do one thing, baby, still be the NWA World's Tag Team Champions.
That's right, Tony. No, Greensboro, but it always excites me. The 25th silver anniversary of the NWA Tag Teams. But let me tell you something. Arn Anderson, baby, like he said, we had asked for the cage to keep outside interference out. And that's what's going to happen. Greensboro, be ready, baby, because we are coming to you live and in color. It is signed, sealed, and delivered right here in this steel cage. And we're going to find out once and for all who is the number one team in NWA today. Woo.
For the world
Man, Ricky and Robert, it doesn't get any cooler for 1986, but probably no comparison. Ricky was maybe a better talker than Robert, if I had to guess.
Yeah, but you know what? Robert had his place.
Oh, for sure.
You know, every time you start trying to say, it's just like saying Shawn Michaels and Jannetty, that Jannetty was the weak link. If you ever been in the ring with those guys, there wasn't a weak link.
You wouldn't say that if you wrestled them. That's exactly right.
Damn right. If you've been there, I mean, the skills, all of that. Now, you know, if you were in those days, if you could talk and you could work, or you had a great body and you could talk, or you had a great body and you could work, if you had two of the three, you didn't have to be a great talker, as long as you were an adequate talker. And let me tell you something, the Rock and Roll Express appealed to a female audience. And I would say if you went back and checked the numbers, probably female of all different ages, probably from 10 years or 8 years, all the way up to 25-year-olds. And they were all over that audience, you know, and that was something that wasn't normal. You know, we didn't draw, it was a man's soap opera.
Right.
We didn't draw a lot of women. Would you concur with that?
Totally. And they changed that.
They put some female butts in seats, which jumped the houses, because now the guys that were going to the matches will go back and tell the buddies, man, you should have went with us, man. There were broads all over the place.
Yeah.
So that's why that was their value.
Let me give some examples here. If you were a club promoter, and listen, there's a lot of people who maybe they're not club promoters, but they're at least familiar with the idea of ladies' night. The idea being, hey, if you come on down to so-and-so club, you pay no cover, and what do you know, drinks for everybody else or whatever they cost, but for you, drinks are $1 or what have you. The idea being, if you've got a club filled with ladies, well, the guys will show up. Well, it turns out that works for anything, wrestling included, right, Arn?
Bingo. Wasn't brain surgery. Get some attractive women in the joint, you're going to have guys following them around. That's the way it was. And, you know, during that period, I would say if you check any other time in the history of the business, it was probably more prevalent during that time than any other time.
Which paid dividends in a variety of ways. Let's talk about November 8th on Worldwide, the very same show where we heard these two promos. The Andersons are going to have a bit of a squash match and do a promo after. Let's take a listen and see what that sounded like here.
In the world today, the World Tag Team Champions, the Rock and Roll Express.
That's right, Dave. I can't wait for the Starrcade for the 25th silver anniversary. Anderson's been signed. Cage match, the best on the line. 2-on-2 day with the country, and a team in the country to beat the Rock and Roll Express. Right there, guys. We're going down the hands of us, Dave.
That's the way it is, Tony. Like he said, it is signed, sealed, and delivered. The 25th silver anniversary of the NWA World Tag Team Champions. And it's been with the Andersons. You have seen before, they've seen earlier. All the things they have done to interfere with the Rock and Roll Express because they know that 202, they can't compare to it. But you're going to see right here, Thanksgiving night, when we step inside that cage, no interference, no outside interference. It's going to be 202, baby. And we're going to get down. And they're going to find out who's the best in town. Rock and Roll Express forever. Yeah. That's right. Rock and Roll is here to stay. And look at him. He is up there. Watch the Rock and Roll. He's going to have to wait until Starrcade, Thanksgiving night. And I know Thanksgiving night, he can get all the rock and roll he can handle, too. Oh, don't you know it?
So at that point, we see a look of you in a tag team match, and you're begging, you're just dying for those guys to come on over and say boo. And of course, they're not gonna. It's you and Tully. Let's take a listen to the end of the match here. Tully tags out, and you come.
Just Jimmy said, I don't have a partner. I don't have a man to wrestle yet. There's a guard buster.
And he puts him down hard. Can he do it? He and Ole, the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, inside that steel cage for the world tag team title against the Rock and Roll Express. That's right. Blanchard, first blood against the American.
They're going to show a replay here, but Arn, real quick, a TV taping was essentially a night off, was it not?
It was a place to go show off, show what your skills are, take a less than qualified opponent and basically just use them to send an example out to the world. And that's what TV was in those days. Sharpen your claws for all the heels.
And talk them into the seats. And let's talk about that. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
All right, the countdown is on. The Four Horsemen.
You just got a first-hand lesson of what it's like to deal with the Four Horsemen of wrestling. The Rock and Roll Express can come out here, and all these teeny boppers can jump up and down and get excited, wave pictures and wave bandanas. But when they get to Starrcade and the bell rings, that's when the horrification begins, when they stare across the ring and look at Ole and Arn Anderson. And that's just going to set the tune for the rest of the night, because the American Dream's got that and a whole lot more in store for him. David Crockett, if I can take a 260-pound, whatever his name was, Savage, and a little G-string and drop him on his hand, what makes you think I can't do it to Morton, to Gibson? The bottom line is, in the silver anniversary of Jeff Crockett Promotions, Silver Star Starrcade, I'm talking 25 years, nothing is more fitting but to return the titles to the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, who's held it more times and longer than any team on the face of the earth. If you're a bookmaker, if you're an odds maker, if you're just a concerned citizen, if you want to call the shot, call it this way: Four Horsemen will prevail the night we prevail. Starrcade. You know, Thanksgiving night, it's not going to be the night of the Skywalkers. It's going to be the night the Horsemen walk out with all the trophies. The night the Horsemen reign. Thanksgiving '86.
What a cool promo that is, especially with the benefit of hindsight. You guys are fired up and ready to go.
You ain't kidding. On a shoot level, I mean, that's a huge, huge show on a huge night, huge opponents, and it's being built beautifully. Who wouldn't be excited?
And don't forget, in order to watch that, along with Arn and Dax, you can sign up at adfreeshows.com. Of course, that weekend, we had a couple other shows. On November 8th, we had World Championship Wrestling, the old 605 show, and we would hear from the Rock and Roll Express. Let's take a listen.
Side, as you heard earlier, in the cage, World Tag Team Motors, Starrcade against the Andersons, Ricky.
That's right, Tony, the 25th silver anniversary of the NWA World Tag Team title match. You see, Andersons, we have been in a lot of many fights with you, but every time it come down to the end, it was always four of you. You know, you've seen, Tony, when all four of them did the Dusty Rhodes leg. What all four of them did to my face when they crushed my nose. And you up on the ring, on Anderson, you listen and listen well, baby. This time, it's going to be our match. We're going to be in a cage, no outside interference, because you already signed it, baby, our way. And we're going to prove to you and the rest of the world that we are the world champions. Come on down here, big boy. I'll show you something, because we'll get started right now. Starrcade, baby. The night of the Skywalkers and the silver 25th silver anniversary. We'll be looking for you. So you bring on all that down, baby, because we are the champions of the world. Woo!
World Tag Team Champions. Let's go to the ring.
So, man, they're selling this thing just as well as you are, and we're not done. There's also the Pro episode, which also aired on November 8th, and this time we're going to hear from the whole Horseman outfit. Not just the Andersons, not just the Rock and Rolls, The whole Horseman.
Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, James J. Dillon. You got to feel good about Starrcade 86, but what a tremendous reception from the crowd for the superpowers, JJ.
Well, the adulation was very moving, but the question that I ask is, how long is it really going to last? Because Dusty Rhodes was destined from the day he was born side by side with his father in his early years in a plumber's ditch. He's had to dig and crawl his whole life. And granted, on a few occasions, he's going right to the top. He's been a world champion 3 times. But in each and every case, he slid back down into the ditch. And if you check your history books, you'll find out it was the Four Horsemen that broke his leg. It was the Four Horsemen that cost him the world title. It was the Four Horsemen that broke his arm. And we're going to continue to break bones, to break spirit, all the way to Starrcade 86, where we're going to finally take what little they got left, and that's the world television title. We're going to take the world tag team titles from the Rock and Roll Express, and Ric Flair will once again reign as the world's heavyweight champion, and you'll see the biggest party ever, because the Four Horsemen are going to take it all. Bob Cadillac, I'm not going to talk about Dusty Rhodes, your American Dream. I'm not going to talk about GQ ball, QQ ball, Koloff, standing here all bowed up. I'm going to talk about a short subject, and that's the Rock and Roll Express. Morton, I don't know how many times we had to hurt you and insult you. Gibson, I don't know how many times we had to hurt you and insult you. All of America was behind you, pushing you to the front, and the whole time, all you could do was back up. You think you wanted a cage match? All we did was con you into it, because, gentlemen, check our track record. Dusty Rhodes broke arm, broke leg via a cage match. Ron Garvin broke hands. Check the casualty list. The bottom line is the tag titles are coming home.
The night of the Horseman. Dusty Rhodes, you got to sign that contract. Crockett had no choice. You're going to be mine Thanksgiving night, and this will be the night the Horsemen reign in all over the country. Starrcade 86. The Horsemen are going to rule.
Listen, I know it's hard for a lot of our younger listeners to understand, but Starrcade was the precursor to WrestleMania. I know people refer to WrestleMania as the granddaddy of them all, but in reality, Starrcade was there first. And here you guys are trying to sell the closed circuit as it was in 86, and of course tickets, but still, here now is Tully Blanchard, your tag team partner about half the time, taking on Dusty Rhodes in a singles match. And you yourself, you're going to be teaming with Ole to take on the Rock and Roll Express in a cage match. Was there any part of you that had aspirations to be in singles rather than tags? Or were you thrilled to be in a cage with the Rock and Rolls?
To be honest with you, my entire career, if you took it at a capsule and said, what was your favorite? Being in a great tag match with the right components was my favorite place to be. My favorite match. I believe to this day, if you have an unlimited amount of time, the right opponents, the right build, the right setting, nothing can follow a tremendous tag match. Just my feeling. And that was my preference. You know, singles had no problem with, enjoyed those too, but being in a hell of a tag match for 30, 40 minutes, man, you could tell a lot of stories and really shine a lot of talent at the very same time. Everybody could show you exactly what their worth was in a great tag match.
You showed everybody your worth on November 9th. You worked 2 shots, a matinee and a night show. The matinee is in Nashville. You're in the main event against Ricky and Robert, taking on Ole and Arn. That's the very last match of the night. And then you're going to scoot over to Cincinnati, Ohio at the Gardens. 6,500 folks are on hand to see Dusty and Nikita take on Rick and Arn in a steel cage match. Do you happen to remember a steel cage match here with Nikita and Dusty and you teaming with Rick? That feels like a pretty rare occurrence here in Cincinnati.
Yeah. You know, there's so many matches that I had that if I saw it, if someone had film of it, I could remember it, but just trying to pull it out of the depths of the cloudy memory of my mind right now, I can't remember it, but that's a pretty stout main event for sure.
For sure. No doubt about it. On the 11th, you guys would do a couple of TV tapings for Worldwide and Pro. Both would air on the 15th. On Worldwide, you and Ole would defeat Gary Royal and another fellow. On Pro, you and Ole would defeat Brody Chase and Vernon Deaton. We're going to take a listen to that in a minute. But first, I want to mention a match that happened on the 13th. This stuck out like a sore thumb. It's you and Jimmy Garvin taking on Baron Von Raschke and Don Kernodle. Of course, you and I both think a lot of Don Kernodle and, of course, Barry Von Raschke, but you and Jimmy Garvin as a tag team is not something I ever imagined. Any chance you remember that one?
That's one of the rarest off-the-wall, oddball pairings. Would they run out of humans?
It feels like it.
I think there was something that happened that we didn't have any humans that week. Because isn't it just that combination is as weird as you reading it out to me?
It feels like a Royal Rumble. You're just pulling numbers at random.
Where was it?
That one was in the Norfolk Scope, November 13th.
Were there any people there?
Well, it turns out there was. The main event, though, was Brad Armstrong, Ricky, and Robert taking on Bubba, Bobby, and Dennis. And it's a DQ. So it's a little weird. You're third from the top, somewhere in there. Rick Rude, who we've recently established, is fresh to the promotion, or the territory, if you will, taking on Hector Guerrero. The next day, though, you're in Washington, D.C. This time you've got Ricky and Robert taking on Ole and Arn. Morton is going to pin Ole 14.5 minutes. And then in the main event, it's Dusty and Nikita taking on Rick and Tully. So it feels like they really like the idea of getting over Dusty and Nikita against various members of the Horsemen. How'd you like Rick as a tag team partner? Most of the time, people think of Ric Flair as an individual performer, a singles competitor, if you will. But you had a few tag matches with him here. What did you think of Rick as a tag partner?
He was more geared for singles. And the reality was you would, which I never recommend during a tag match, but during this situation, it's the only way it could happen. It was like having two single matches, to be honest with you. Rick had his shtick. He was geared one way. He had everything that he did, he would do on a nightly basis. That's what the audience paid for. That's what they wanted to see him do. I kind of had to fall in line because in tag matches, you sacrifice yourself quite a bit so your partner can retake the advantage, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
With Rick, it was a different deal. He took the lead. He did what he wanted to do, and I just kind of filled in the blanks. Again, if you have a chance to be partners with the world champion, keep your mouth shut, go out, do your best to look like you belong. And that's about all you can do.
Well, you belong. November 15th. We've got a worldwide promo from the Andersons. Let's take a listen.
Right here, the World Tag Team Championship's going to be on the line at Starrcade 86. The Andersons, Ole and Arn Anderson. It's in a cage, Ole.
You're darn right, and I'll tell you what, it's the best thing that could possibly happen to us. We've been chasing rock and roll for a long time. Bob, I don't think there's anybody more qualified to be the champions than the Andersons. The Andersons championship synonymous, one and the same. Rock and roll, you run just as far as you can because now you come to stomp on that cage. Starrcade 86 is going to be the biggest and best ever. We're going to be there. We're going to be right in the middle of it. The Four Horsemen. And rock and roll, we're going to go after those belts in that cage. Like I said before, people sitting at home, you may not have any idea what it's like to be in a cage. Go out in the backyard and take a look at your fence. Rub your arm against it. Rub your head up against it. You're going to get an idea what it's going to happen when we put that Rock and Roll Express up against it. We're coming for those belts, and I guarantee you, we're going to walk out the NWA Tag Team Champions.
Our title on this, the silver anniversary of the World Tag Team titles. First of all, we had to prove ourselves just to become one of the Four Horsemen. I myself had to prove myself that I was worthy of having The Rock as a partner, being the junior member of the Four Horsemen. But now, at the greatest single event in history, we're going to prove once and for all rock and roll that two little men are never as good as two big men. And as far as you go, Dusty Rhodes, we don't care about airplanes. We care about victories. Nikita Koloff, you jumped the fence. You're in no man's land. You're on your own. But rock and roll, we're thinking expensive for you. Cage match, Starrcade.
Fans for Tony Schiavone and David Crockett. So long.
So, Arn, chat me up through Horseman jewelry. It feels like when I watch that promo, I see you not only have on a gold necklace, but you got a gold watch. Of course, you got your gold wedding band. And then on the other right hand, you've got a gold pinky ring and a gold bracelet. Was it like a low key requirement in the Horseman? You had to have some gold on your wrists and hands?
I had never even owned a watch.
Well, so you had
till I got, huh?
I'm just wondering, that was a bracelet and not a watch? It looked like a watch.
No. It was probably a nugget watch. And I had a nugget bracelet to match.
There you go.
Pinky ring was looking pretty good. Hey, before I got into business, I don't even think I owned a watch. So things were looking pretty good. At this point, business was damn good. And for a kid from Rome, Georgia, that was a meat cutter and pushed pipe and worked on a tractor and stacked furniture and did every lousy job a man could do just to contribute to the household and, make things fly on my granny's end, to be suddenly making money. Yeah. You know what? I bought my wife some nice stuff and bought myself a piece of jewelry or two myself. Looks pretty
Nugget
good.
Stuff.
Looks pretty good, don't it?
Hey.
Nugget was in, Daddy.
Oh, listen, my dad to this day, and it's 2021, my dad still wears a right hand nugget ring. He loves him some nugget stuff. And I'm like, Dad, like that Horseman shit, that's out of style now in 2021. But he don't want to hear it. He's still rocking nugget proudly, just for you, baby.
Yeah. And you know what? He would be correct.
What'd you do with your old nugget stuff? I mean, I can't imagine that Barrett or Brock are running around rocking some nugget stuff on your behalf.
It's another story for a feature on what happened to the jewelry on another episode.
Roll title now.
It is not what you think. Let me put it to you that way.
Well, let's talk about November 16th. You guys would be back in Atlanta and you're recording a show for the 22nd. Now, as a reminder, most of the time in TBS, you record the morning, it airs that night. This is football season, so you're trying to get ahead. You actually go on last, beating Tony Zane in 30 whole seconds. And then the next day, you're in St. Louis, Missouri. This time, you're wrestling there for quote-unquote Central States. About 1,500 fans there. And Arn Anderson would defeat Dave Patterson in the opening round. But in the quarterfinals, Sam Houston gets a win over you. But in reality, you probably didn't give a darn about ever going back to Central States, if I had to guess.
If Sam beat me that night, it was due to lack of interest. And I'm trying to catch a boat, plane, rent a car, anything, train, just to get out of there.
Trains, planes, and automobiles, whatever it takes to get the hell out of here and to Greenville, South Carolina on the 17th, where it's Dusty, Nikita, and Animal teaming with Paul Ellering to take on Flair, Tully, Ole, and Arn. The Horsemen come up on the losing effort. You know, it feels like most of the time when we're at live events and not on TV, more often than not, well, the Horsemen are getting their hand raised. Was Tully okay with that? It feels like Tully's a little old school. He would have rather it been at least 50-50. Do you remember in 1986, not 87 or 88, was Tully ever frustrated with the way you guys were being booked in 86?
Oh, I'm sure of it. I'm sure it drove him crazy. It did drive him crazy. got to remember now, he came from a different place. His dad had a territory. Tully was college football player, quarterback. And, his dad had his own territory, and Tully was, I'm sure, one of the stars. He had a different life from me. I was thrilled. You could have beat me twice every single night, 3 times in the same match, and I would be thrilled. I was just glad to be there. And that was never lost on me. I wasn't worried about, you can't keep up with who won or lost. Sure, we lost as many, if not more than we won. We just won when it counted, which would be on television.
Well, it didn't count November 18th. You guys are in a TV taping, but it's a dark match. It's Dusty and Nikita beating you and Tully. The next day on the 19th, you're in Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's not something we normally talk about here on this program, but you and Wahoo go to a no contest. Green Bay, of course, home of the Packers, big time football town. Any memories of your match here in Green Bay against Wahoo?
And this is November. It had to be snow on the ground and freezing. Had to be freezing. And depending on that little arena, I don't remember if it was cold. I want to say might have been a hockey rink. Not sure what building we ran, but you can bet it was freezing outside. And if it was freezing inside, those chops would cut you in half. Green Bay was, it's a great sports city. They really support their team. And wrestling was, when we come to town, we were a big deal too. So fan support was terrific.
Speaking of big deals, how about a 14,000 person sellout on November 22nd in Baltimore? It's Ole and Arn taking on Dutch Mantell and Bobby Jaggers in a Texas Tornado match. They go 8.5 minutes before you pin Mantell. But still, 14,000 folks in Baltimore. It had to feel pretty good. A little vote of confidence, if you will.
It was worth trying to wade through that mustache of Dutch's to have that many fans watching it. Baltimore is a great city. They always have been, and what a team Dutch and Bobby Jaggers made. They were, just if you just sit in the locker room and listen to them, they're both so full of shit. And in a joking way, they were just entertaining. And they, that's a couple of guys that I wish a lot of these young guys had the opportunity to meet and sit around a locker room with and just see how they enjoyed themselves and enjoyed the business. And, it was just a different time in the business. Guys like the characters like those guys, don't come around very often. And, the fact that there were a team just made it even more interesting and entertaining.
Tony Schiavone tells a story that once upon a time, he cut a localized promo about these guys, and he referred to one as a slapjack wino and the other had a throw rug on his back or something like that. It tickles Tony. Do you remember that promo in particular? Because he talks about it 35 years later.
Absolutely. And the throw rug on the back was, he had that man, Dutch, had the hairiest back. It was appalling. If I grabbed him in the front face lock and bent him over, I was afraid to whack him across the back, afraid a bunch of spider monkeys to jump out of his hair or something. It went to a new level of a hairy back, I'm telling you.
Atlanta, of course, is going to host the WTBS tapings. You guys would record on the 23rd. It would air on the 29th. And then you're off to Asheville, North Carolina on the 23rd, and you're in the main event. It's Ricky and Robert taking on Flair and Arn. The next day, a TV taping on the 24th in Greenville, South Carolina. And you're in the main event again. This time it's one of those deals where it's just enhancement talent, one after another. And what do you know? Starrcade is right around the corner, November 27th. In Greensboro, we would see Ricky and Robert take on Ole and Arn. You guys go just over 19 minutes, and Ricky and Robert get the win in a steel cage match. And you and Dax are going to watch that over at adfreeshows.com. And years ago, as we mentioned earlier in the program, Steve Austin said one of his favorite tag matches of all time. Where does it rank for you? all time?
It's got to be right there because you got to look at the situation. Now, had we been the champions and we're going in to defend, the strategy would have been completely different. The onus was on was on us to take the titles, which means we had to win the match. So we beat the crap out of both of those guys for the predominance of that entire match. If you look at the split, it was probably, I would say 70-30.
Wow.
And even after I got pinned and the Rock and Roll was trying to get out of that cage, Ole was pounding the piss out of them all the way out the door. So not only did we beat them both up, when the match was over, he's still waylaying them out of the cage. So it was one of those deals that we lost, but nobody really noticed. And I think that's what Austin liked about it, is the fact that we were able to get two substantial sets of what we call steam or heat on those guys, and they were fighting for their life. So even in a losing scenario, all four of us benefited from that match.
By the way, you didn't get there on your own. You had to talk them into the seats. And on November 22nd, just a few days prior to Starrcade, you would appear on Worldwide with this promo. Let's take a listen.
Can you do it? Can you, inside the cage, you and Ole against the Rock and Roll, they asked for the match inside that cage.
Every Crockett, I'm going to get down and I'm going to talk about theory. Theory is what comes to a head on a situation like Starrcade. You see, I go to these arenas in every major city in the country, and people look at me, they swear at me, they spit on me, they say, you make me sick. Don't you have any morals at all? And I go back and I think to myself, time and time again, I start thinking, well, am I doing right? Am I doing the proper things that I should be doing? And it all comes to me when I pull up in my driveway after getting off at Butler Aviation, off that private jet. And I pull up in my driveway and I see those two new cars, that new home full of new furniture. Then I go and I look at my bank book and it all comes back to me. And I take that public opinion and I wad it up and I throw it in the trash can. You see, the Four Horsemen don't thrive on public opinion. They don't thrive on trying to please the PTA. What we thrive on is being the very best we can be at what we are. And what we're doing at this particular stage of the game is getting ready for Starrcade. You see, when we go to Flair's and we're in that gym, pumping that iron, doing those free squats, doing those step-ups, then we move into the house and we sit there and we watch the tape. The three things we've decided. Number one, rock and roll. You've been afforded a luxury of being champion for a long time. Now, the Andersons are on the attack. Check our record in a cage match. Number two, Dusty Rhodes, the one thing that is most evident about you is you cut real easy. So, first blood, there's our angle of attack. And last but not least, cue ball, just because you want to say you've been Americanized, Ric Flair's going to do what he's done better than anybody else in the last 4 years, and that is defend the title that's always been his. The Four Horsemen reign.
Arn, could you have done a better job selling the whole pay-per-view? My goodness, you ran through all the matches, it seems like.
I feel like I'm pretty proud of that one.
You should be.
Didn't stumble over any words. Felt like it was intense without screaming.
Right.
And it covered a lot of ground. I was hearing that back again. I think I was very satisfied with that.
Well, you should be, and you weren't done. As if that wasn't enough, Starrcade happened on the 27th. On the 28th, you're back at it again, because why not? This time it's Richmond, Virginia. 9,000 fans there to see you and Ole take on Ricky and Robert in a non-title Texas Tornado match. And that's the last time you'd wrestle in November 86. What a memorable month this was, man. Starrcade, all the other cool stuff. This has got to be a highlight moment for you overall when you look back at your storied career.
Well, that was textbook way to build towards a big show, towards a big card, towards a lot of angles, blow off, for some angles, just continuance of others, and just a way to feature a town and Greensboro, which had already made itself famous for being a great town, to have a great event. It just felt like it was just continuing to get bigger and bigger. And I just wanted to be on as many of those as I possibly could be on.
Don't forget, we'll be back next week talking about all things December of 86, but December of 86 would include a trip west, San Francisco and Inglewood, California, and 8,500 fans in San Francisco, 7,000 in Inglewood. Who would have ever guessed? Not bad for a boy from Rome, Georgia, huh?
Not kidding. And never been to the first, West Coast before. It was pretty cool.
It was cool indeed. And we hope you guys had a cool Christmas. Today, as people are listening to this, Arn, it's Christmas Day. Do you have a little Arn Anderson wisdom for them to drop on them on Christmas Day?
Yep. Just guys, remember, it's Jesus' birthday. Remember exactly what it's about, and everything else will fall in place for you if you just remember that. And do something nice for a stranger. Tell the people that you really do love them, that you do love them, and just enjoy Christmas for what it's meant to be. In the last couple of years, it's for those people that couldn't spend time together because of COVID and all the other problems in the world. This year, hopefully a lot more got to sit around there with their family and just enjoy it for what it is. And I'm very thankful that I have the friends I have, and you're included in that list, my man.
Listen, man, it's been a great honor getting to hang out with you, and I can't believe it. This is our last show of 2021. When we come to you next week, it's going to be January 1st, 2022. When you were a young man, Arn, could you have ever imagined you'd be talking about your career in 2022? That feels like a make-believe number. Does it not? 2022.
Very few people, I think, can say that they started in 82 and pretty much have had a job in the business this entire time, right up until as we speak. And when you're a part of this business, I think you're always a part of the business in your heart and in your mind. I'm just lucky that we get to do it on a podcast.
Well, and we appreciate you guys very much. It's been one hell of a year. Both Arn and myself greatly appreciate it. Not only us, but our families. Our family appreciates your family. We hope you guys will consider adfreeshows.com. Not only do you get these shows early and ad free, but you also get an opportunity to interact with these folks, including Arn Anderson and Dax from FDR. As we are finishing up the episode, they're going to take a look at Starrcade 86, that cage match that Stone Cold loves so much. It'll be a Q&A afterwards, and you can not only hear that, but participate in that over at adfreeshows.com. Until next time, he is at the Arn Show. I am at Hey, it's Conrad, and we'll see you next week talking December of 86 in 2022. What in the world is happening? Merry Christmas, and we'll see you guys on New Year's right here on Arn